Picture the last time it happened. 1 second your dog is lying there, calm, maybe half asleep, and the next, with zero warning, they detonate. Ears pinned back, eyes wild, they tear around the room in tight, frantic loops, skidding off the furniture, spinning, launching across the sofa like they've been possessed. 30 seconds of pure chaos. And then, just as suddenly, it's over, and they flop down like nothing happened. You probably have a name for this, the Zoomies, and you almost certainly have an explanation for it too, the one everybody repeats. Oh, they've just got too much energy to burn off. It sounds obvious. It sounds right. And here's the problem. It's mostly wrong. That tidy little explanation doesn't actually fit the evidence. And once you see why, you'll never look at the Zoomies the same way. Because the real triggers are far stranger, far more revealing, and they're hiding in plain sight in exactly when your dog chooses to lose their mind. Stay with me because the timing of the Zoomies isn't random at all, and near the end, there's one version worth keeping an eye on. First, let's take this behavior seriously, because it's real enough to have a proper name. Animal behavior researchers call these episodes FRAPs, frenetic random activity periods. Frenetic because they're intense. Random because they seem to come from nowhere. Activity periods because they're short, self-contained bursts. And the fact that this has a recognized label matters because it tells you the Zoomies aren't a quirk of your specific dog being weird. They're a widespread normal pattern seen across dogs everywhere, and in young animals of many other species too. Now, the standard story says a FRAP is just a dog burning off excess fuel, like a kettle letting off steam. But hold that explanation up against what you actually see, and it starts springing leaks. If Zoomies were simply about discharging surplus energy, they'd happen fairly randomly whenever a dog had been still too long. But that's not when they happen. They happen at very specific, almost predictable moments, and those moments are the real clue. So let's do what the too much energy crowd never does. Let's actually look at when the Zoomies strike, treat each one as a clue, and see what the pattern reveals. Here's the first and most famous trigger, and it instantly embarrasses the energy theory. The bath. Think about it. Your dog has just spent 10 minutes standing perfectly still in a tub, doing nothing physical at all. By the burning off energy logic, they should be the opposite of Zoomie. They've expended nothing. And yet the post-bath Zoomies are so reliable that owners brace for them. The moment that towel comes off, the dog explodes. So if it isn't pent-up energy, what is it? Two things are likely happening, and neither is about fuel. The first is physical sensation, that intense, full-body weirdness of being soaking wet. The friction of the towel, the desperate drive to dry off and get that strange feeling off their skin, which a frantic run does perfectly. The second is emotional, the release of relief. For a lot of dogs, a bath is a stressful, tightly held experience. The Zoomies that follow look a lot like a sudden discharge of all that built-up tension the second it's over. The bath Zoomies aren't about energy. They're about sensation and release. Clue 1. Logged. Already the simple story is in trouble. Here's the second clue. Many dogs have a daily Zoomie window, and it's wildly consistent, often in the evening. Ask around and you'll hear the same thing again and again. The witching hour, that nightly slot where the dog reliably goes feral for a few minutes. If Zoomies were purely about surplus energy, why would they cluster at the same time every day, regardless of how active the dog had been? The answer points somewhere more interesting. the rhythm of the day itself. Part of it can be a genuine end-of-day energy release, but tied to routine rather than raw fuel, a discharge that's become part of the daily cycle. And part of it, frankly, can be learned. If a dog has discovered that going bananas at 8 p.m. reliably gets the family laughing, chasing, and engaging, that's a powerful reward, and they'll repeat it. The evening Zoomies are often less "I have energy" and more "this is the time of day when fun happens." Clue 2. The timing is patterned, not random. The energy theory keeps failing to explain the clock. Now the most revealing clue of all, the one that cracks the case open. Watch closely and you'll notice Zoomies erupt at moments of high emotion. The explosion of joy when you walk through the door. The overwhelm of excitement when you pick up the leash for a walk. That tipping point during play when arousal climbs and suddenly boils over into a manic lap of the garden. These aren't moments of a dog being under-exercised. They're moments of a dog being flooded with feeling. This is the heart of it. A FRAP is, in large part, an outlet for emotional arousal that's grown too big to contain. Excitement, anticipation, joy, even stress can build up faster than a dog can process, and the body needs a release valve. That frantic burst of motion is the valve. It's the physical discharge of an emotional state that's overflowed, which completely reframes the behavior. The Zoomies aren't your dog having too much fuel in the tank. They're your dog feeling something so intensely that their body has to do something with it. It's not an energy problem. It's an emotion, spilling over into motion. Case effectively closed. If your dog is in the room right now, here's something to try later. Next time the Zoomies hit, don't think too much energy. Ask instead, what just happened emotionally? A bath ending, you arriving, a walk beginning, play peaking. You'll spot the trigger almost every time, and you'll be reading your dog the way the energy crowd never can. Once you understand Zoomies as emotional overflow rather than fuel dumping, even the weird specifics start to make sense. Take the frantic, looping, circular running. A dog overwhelmed with feeling in a living room doesn't have a destination. They're not going anywhere. They just need to move, so the movement turns into tight, repeating loops around the space available. The shape of the Zoomies is just emotion with nowhere to go, expressed in the floor plan of your house. And notice the classic Zoomie body, the play bow, the tucked rear end, the exaggerated bouncy movements. This is mostly happy body language. For the typical FRAP, this is the posture of an animal in a positive, playful, high-arousal state, not a distressed one. That's why Zoomies are generally something to enjoy rather than worry about. They're usually a sign of a happy, comfortable dog letting big feelings out. There's also a reason this shows up so dramatically in younger dogs and tends to soften as they age. Puppies and young dogs feel things at full volume and have far less practice at managing those surges, so the overflow spills into motion more readily and more often. As a dog matures, they get better at holding and processing arousal without needing to physically blow it off, which is why the daily Zoomies of a wild young dog usually mellow into the occasional happy burst of an older one. The behavior doesn't vanish because they ran out of energy. It eases because they got better at feeling things without exploding. That developmental arc is another quiet strike against the fuel theory. You'd expect a calmer adult to have more surplus energy sitting around, not less. Yet they zoom less, because the real driver was emotional regulation all along. Understanding the why even helps you respond well. Since a lot of Zoomies are emotional overflow, the worst thing you can do is chase a zooming dog around, which cranks the arousal even higher and teaches them that detonating gets a thrilling reaction. Far better to give them safe space, stay calm, and let the wave pass, which it always does, in under a couple of minutes. If anything, a chronically zoomy dog is often telling you they could use more outlets earlier in the day, more sniffing, more play, more mental work, so the arousal has somewhere to go before it boils over on your living room floor. So let's put the old explanation properly to rest. Too much energy isn't entirely meaningless. A chronically underexercised, bored, pent-up dog can certainly be more prone to frantic outbursts, and that part is real. But as the headline explanation for the Zoomies, it fails. It can't explain the bath. It can't explain the clockwork timing. It can't explain why the biggest Zoomies erupt at peaks of pure emotion. The energy theory mistakes a side character for the lead. The fuller picture is this. The Zoomies are a normal, healthy, largely emotional release valve. A burst of physical motion that discharges a feeling, or a sensation, or an end-of-day rhythm that's grown too big to sit still with. Sometimes that feeling is relief after the bath. Sometimes it's joy when you come home. Sometimes it's the happy overflow of play. They're not a malfunction, and they're usually not a problem to be solved. They're one of the most honest windows you get into your dog's emotional state, if you know how to read them. And now you do. You're no longer guessing too much energy. You're watching the trigger and seeing the feeling behind it. Now, the part I asked you to stay for, because reading any behavior well means knowing its edges. The overwhelming majority of Zoomies are completely healthy and genuinely good to see. But there are a few situations worth a closer look. And the theme, as always on this channel, is context and change. First, watch the context of the emotion. If the Zoomies seem to erupt out of stress rather than joy, in a dog who looks anxious or overwhelmed rather than playful, that's worth noticing, because a frantic outburst can occasionally be a release valve for distress, not delight. The body language around it tells you which. Second, the simple matter of safety. The Zoomies themselves are fine, but a dog tearing around at full speed on a slippery floor, near sharp furniture corners, or close to a road, can get genuinely hurt. The behavior is healthy. The environment is what needs managing, so give them grip and space. And third, as always, watch for change. A sudden, dramatic shift in the pattern, Zoomies becoming far more frequent and frantic than your dog's normal, or an older dog who never zoomed suddenly starting up intense, repetitive, frantic activity, is the kind of change worth a calm mention to your vet, just to be thorough. For the everyday happy Zoomie, though, there's nothing to fix. You can simply enjoy the show. So the next time your dog detonates without warning and goes tearing around the room like a furry tornado, you won't reach for the lazy explanation everyone else uses. You won't shrug and say, too much energy. You'll do something better. You'll read it. You'll glance at what just happened, the bath that just ended, the door you just walked through, the play that just hit its peak, and you'll understand that what you're watching isn't a fuel problem at all. It's a feeling, too big to hold in, spilling out through 4 scrambling legs and a wild pair of eyes. That's the whole point of paying attention to this stuff. Every one of these strange little behaviors is a window, and most people walk right past them with a lazy one-line explanation that isn't even true. You're choosing to actually look, and a dog whose owner reads them accurately, who responds to the real feeling instead of a myth, is a dog who's genuinely better understood. That's worth more than knowing a fun fact. It makes you better at the relationship. If this busted the Zoomies myth for you, Leave a like and subscribe, because nearly everything you've been told about dog behavior deserves this same second look. And that's exactly what this channel does. Tell me in the comments, when do your dog's zoomies hit? After the bath, in the evening, or the second you get home? And if you've ever wondered why your dog tilts their head when you talk to them, the real reason is surprisingly clever, and that's the next video.